And now I want to yield to my good friend from North Carolina, Mike McIntyre.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Speaker, I share with these dear friends today marking the passing into glory of Mr. Charles Chuck Colson. We knew Chuck as a dear friend and Christian brother, author, radio commentator, and also one who challenged us all to think more about our worldview. With his passing, our nation has lost an uncommon leader, a true example of the transformative power of Jesus Christ, and a reminder of the beauty of second chances in life. While some will forever remember Mr. Colson for his role in the Watergate scandal, I will remember and honor him for the grace and perseverance with which he advocated for the least of these in our society, those that were marginalized, those that were seen as helpless. Through his work with Prison Fellowship, the world's largest organization for outreach to prisoners and former prisoners and prisoners' families, and through his inspirational books and commentaries, Chuck Colson touched thousands of lives and advocated tirelessly for programs that would not only address the physical needs of those in our nation's prisons, but also their spiritual needs as well. And in addition, Mr. Colson's daily radio show, Breakpoint, during which he would share a commentary on the life of Christ and also on the Christian worldview on the issues of the day, was such a challenge and an inspiration to me that as a young lawyer in southeastern North Carolina in my hometown of Lumberton, I actually put copies of his Breakpoint commentaries out on the coffee table so that those clients and prospective clients who came to our law office would take time to hear from this lawyer, Chuck Colson, whose life had been so transformed by the experiences he had gone through. And you know, when I think about his insights, that's because they were so challenging and so clear in their wisdom that they were so touching. His books challenge you to think deeply about your own calling in life. What was God calling you to do? And how could you take even the worst of experiences, such as he went, I remember describing looking out on the south lawn of the White House, thinking he was just one door down from the president and the neatly manicured lawn. I remember Chuck 2 or 3 times in different testimonies describing that experience and thinking, you know, I've made it. But then Chuck Colson went from the White House to the very depths of understanding what it meant to be in prison. But instead of letting that ruin his life after the Watergate scandal, he came out of that with his life being changed. His great book, Born Again, was a bestseller back in the 1970s when I was in college. And I still remember when my own father, who passed into glory last year, read that book, that along with other experiences that happened to my own father. That book, Born Again, told a story that my dad could identify with and that helped to change his life. Having heard Chuck Colson speak at Montreat, where my own dad made his own Christian commitment, and hearing Chuck Colson speak at other events with the late Dr. D. James Kennedy down at Coral Ridge Ministries in Florida, and being with Chuck so many times here on Capitol Hill, being part of the lecture series that my good friend mentioned just a moment ago, that I still remember he organized here on Capitol Hill and would invite members of Congress to come and to think more deeply and challenge us to go beyond the politics of the issue. And then, in his monthly newsletter called Jubilee, he would have an editorial at the back that I regularly read and made sure that often I ripped that out and put it in a file because his thoughts were so provocative and challenging in terms of our own worldview. I also had the opportunity to get to know Chuck Colson and count him as a brother in Christ and as a friend, participating not only in the lecture classes here on Capitol Hill, but when he rewrote the book that he had written in 1982, Kingdoms in Conflict, which greatly touched my life as I thought about the possibility of one day maybe coming to this place. He rewrote that book on God and politics and challenged us to think about where we are in our faith as we deal with the tough times in the political world. So much so that my wife, Dee, asked me if for our 25th wedding anniversary, instead of a gift or going on a trip, could we be in the Centurion program that Chuck Colson had, where he had 100 citizens from around this nation participate and spend an entire year studying the Christian worldview on issues ranging from health care to business, from medicine to education, from law and government to issues within religion itself, and challenging us to study the biblical perspective and the Christian worldview, and to think how we deal with those issues as Christians in the everyday world. And so with those 100 citizens from across the country, my wife and I spent a year studying under Chuck Colson's guidance, and went to 3 different seminars that he hosted not too far from here in Washington. What an inspiration this man was, because he didn't just teach, he didn't just talk, but he walked the walk, and he changed lives by God's power in the process. And I know some of you are here with us today. So often we shared the night before the National Prayer Breakfast, that before we came and led the spiritual heritage tours here at the Capitol, that so many hundreds of people have now done over the years, that we made it a regular habit to go to Chuck Colson's annual prison fellowship dinner he had on the Wednesday night before the Thursday National Prayer Breakfast in February. And we looked forward as much to that as being central to the celebration of what the National Prayer Breakfast was about, because we knew the night before Chuck Colson was having his annual dinner, usually honoring some great religious leader or reformer in society, before we had our spiritual heritage tour back here at the Capitol. He often also talked about his experience as a United States Marine at Camp Lejeune, just on the edge of our congressional district. And he also talked about the practical ways that faith can change your life. That's the great legacy I know Chuck Colson would be pleased with today. We're talking about a man not only who was a great author and speaker, but a man whose life changed lives and made a difference. Thank you very much.